We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is the three Amigos, and I'm joined as always by Steve, Mitch, and George. Good evening, lads.
Hello, everybody.
And as we always say, it's a perfect way to kickstart your Newcastle United weekend. Wow, what a couple of weeks we've had. If there was anything such as a Christmas horribleness, then that has certainly been it. Steve, 2 games against the teams, trying to stay up, trying to keep their head above water in Nottingham Forest and Luton Town. Should have really, the way Newcastle have been playing, should have led to 6 points. But we all know football has a horrible thing. Of just basically chucking things in your face, especially when you're a Newcastle fan. And I think the one thing I picked up from Eddie Howe's press conference today, which I'll review tomorrow, is that he's every bit as upset as us, and the players are, because they just didn't see it coming. And after the cup exit to Chelsea in the Carabao Cup, the exit from Europe, of course, in the group of death, then I have 2 games over Christmas, which really should have been a home banker and an away banker. Yeah, it's a tough one to take, isn't it, Steve?
It is, Steve. And I know how the players feel, how exhausted they must feel. 2 games in so many games in quick succession. It's a bit like having 2 nights out with Stuart Penman in quick succession. I can tell you that. So, but on a serious note, I mean, it's been a long month, Steve. It's been an exhausting month, I think, for fans and players, mentally as well as physically, because we seem to have gone through the mill. We've had some ups and we've had some downs. We've had some disappointments. We've had some great performances. And it rubs off on everyone, doesn't it? It rubs off on the fans. It rubs off on the players, the staff. You rattle through the city, and thankfully everyone that I'm meeting seems to be keeping their head above water, and not panicking and not thinking that the great flood is on its way and we're going to be all washed away. Quite the opposite. I think that we've got a hard game to come, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that later on, and a few more hard games to come. And let's face it, I think everyone's always said there's no such thing as easy games in the Premier League, and some of the other clubs' results have shown that as well, Steve. But it's been difficult to take, I think, for a lot of people. But we've just got to keep the faith, and we've just got to stick at it. Players are trying their best. The injuries have rolled through the squad. But the injuries have come at a thick and fast pace, just like the games have, and I think it was inevitable that this is where we would end up. If you'd said to supporters, we can get through 3 games a week and we'll not have any injuries and we'll have a full squad to choose from, and Eddie will be able to rotate, I think everybody would have thought you were mad. And I think that's what's been proved. That it's just the way it is, Steve. We've just got to get through this little barren patch that we've had, get the players back fit, and hopefully an extra few days even for for the squad before they play on Monday night is going to be a bonus for them. It'll seem like a bonus anyway in the extra couple of days.
Yeah, it certainly will. And happy birthday to Tom Dixon in the chat.
Yes.
Yes, it's his birthday today. One of our admin as well. So big happy returns, mate. Hope you've had a good day. Mitch, 2 disastrous results really over Christmas. But meltdown on social media. We know what happens on social media, but we tend to keep ourselves away from that when these kind of things happen. But yeah, look, it's 2 disappointing results, and now going into the month of January, which in all intents and purposes looks like a nightmare in current form.
Yeah, and I've been trying to put my finger on what's going on for a little while, and haven't seen the team in person now. My dad will tell you on at the Forest game, the minute they equalised, I turned to him and said, "Hey, we're done here." There was something in the body language, something in that, the way they just didn't respond, that I've not seen for a long time now. How much of that is physical tiredness? Dan Byrne in his interview a couple of weeks ago with BBC talking about mental tiredness, and that very much looks like what we were. That the intensity that we've been playing, having to play at, spread over the time period with a number of games in that time period, seems to have taken a toll. And I find that fascinating for a team that, plays at the levels we do, the intensity that we do, for it to seem to be the mental aspect, that's the bit that we're struggling a little bit with. And I think while we're all scrambling around trying to work out what's going on, that's created a wonderful little curious concoction for people to come up with all sorts of really bizarre rumours doing the rounds now. And in a lot of rumours like this, there's sometimes a little grain of truth. But honestly, it's like something off of a Discovery Channel documentary now. We're up there, we're hunting Hitler in the Curse of Oak Island about what's going on with the stories about our players, and so. But I think again, that's a reflection on everybody scrambling to try and work out, well, what the hell's going on? And I think everybody's frustrated, and it's clear from what Eddie said today, he is frustrated as well. But interestingly, he still hasn't really chucked anybody under a bus anywhere or anything like that. Yeah. And nor do I ever think he will. I just don't think that's his style. I think there's a certain cabbage head who would have had everybody under the bus by now, because it certainly wouldn't have been him. And so we've just got to stick together. Everybody's got to stick together. And I know it's really difficult. And we're also entitled to ask questions. We're entitled to be a critical friend. We're entitled to be the mate of the club that says, right, you've had enough to drink, go home. We're entitled to be that mate. It's none of these things, like I've said before, so many things at the minute are presented as binary options. And if you're not this, then you're definitely that. Well, that's not the case. You can still be critical of what's going on and ask questions of tactics and selections and things like that. And still recognise that last season they were fantastic and we're in a better place as a club than we were under Ashley. But that doesn't mean we can just be satisfied with mediocrity. If we're going to be forever satisfied with mediocrity, the only thing we'll ever be is the biggest club in Newcastle. And so, you can ask the questions without being overly, portrayed as someone who is turning on the club or turning on the team. I think that's a very different thing. And I would like to see quite a few more adult discussions about it than people's toys coming out the cop every left, right, and centre.
Happy birthday to Gary Milliken in the chat as well. Another birthday today, 29th of December, a popular date. George, last two results. Give us your views on what you've seen.
Before I do that, Steve, can I thank everybody on here and social media for the good wishes for my birthday. I'm really touched by all the lovely things they've said. Just a pity my team couldn't win on your birthday and make it a good day instead of the bloody miserable day it was. Never mind, two disastrous results, and 6 points should have been in the bag. There's no question about that. And I've had a worry, and I think I've mentioned it on here and other platforms before, about some of the things that I see happening on the pitch that would worry me as a player, never mind as a supporter. And that is that within minutes of kickoff at Luton, Longstaff, Dubravka, Shaw were in heated conversations about something. And when I say heated, I mean they're really having a go at each other. That early in a game, there's hardly been enough time to make a mistake. And I have had this niggle in the back of my mind that there's been some sort of change in the dressing room or at the training ground that we don't know about, and that they're trying hard to get rid of. I don't know what it is or what it could be, but it's there for people to see. If you look closely, if you look at the video of Luton, it would hardly kick off. And I said to Neil, because Neil was sitting here watching it with me, look at them two. And then he picked up later on that Longstaff and Dubravka were having a go at each other. And when they say having a go, they really were. And in the Forest game, similar things, but to lesser extent, because we got into the lead through a beautiful penalty from Isak. But then, as Neil says, once they're equalised, they went in. We both turned to each other and said, well, we're going to lose this. Because collectively, you could see the heads go down. And what made it worse was, in the middle of that half, when we went 2-1 down and then 3-1 down, it was palpable that for 20 minutes after that, our team, our midfield, was being run by a 17-year-old. All the big uns disappeared, Bruno included. And all he was interested in was nasty flicks and kicks and making a nuisance of himself, but not in a positive way. And Shaw as well. Shaw was, in my opinion, lucky to stay on the pitch on Boxing Day. Some of the things that he tried against Forest players, a sharper referee would have had him off the pitch. Some of it was really nasty. And what makes senior players do that, in my opinion, is that they're not working for each other like they were before, and that worries me greatly. And I hate saying this because I'm not a negative person. You know, I come on here and I've got a 2-0 win up my sleeve for every game we play, because that's what I want to happen. I've suffered, since 1945, watching all sorts of manner of things go through the doors at St James's Park. And at last we've got something to be proud of. For a long time we haven't had something to be proud of. But it does worry me that these little niggles are creeping in and causing us, causing me a great deal of anxiety. The shining star, it's got to be Lewis Miley, because I say 20 minutes on Boxing Day, he was the only player that was doing anything, particularly in midfield. He was on his own, poor kid, and that's not good either. And there were other decent things as well to come out of it, but by and large, 6 points for me thrown away, just because we didn't apply ourselves in the way that we're used to applying ourselves. And Eddie Howe's got to find the reason for that. That's what he's paid for. But I've got to say, if I can see as much of that from sitting in the stand, 50 meters away from the pitch, if he didn't see it, then I'd be very disappointed indeed, because that's what he's paid to do. So yes, the defeat was really, really hard to take. Both were, but most to take was the manner of the defeat, in my opinion. Not just the fact that we lost; it's how we lost. We let two of the bottom teams in the division take us to the cleaners, frankly, and that can't be good. And we never look like coming back. That's the other issue. When in the past, we might have gone 1-0 down, 2-0 down even, and still felt that we had a chance. Not in those two games, we didn't. We never looked as though we would come back. So, I'm sorry that this is a negative rant, if you like, but it's just how the games felt to me. And there's some hard work to do. We're going to talk about Liverpool later on, Steve. Well, I'm not.
We are. Yeah. We'll be looking at that later on.
I'm not going to that now. But it's as I say, from normally somebody who's extremely positive and sometimes overly positive, those two defeats have stuck in my craw since they happened, and stuck in my craw more because of the manner of the defeat than the actual defeats. We never looked like we could come back. And when senior players resort, like Bruno and like Shaw, go out of type and resort to sneaky little kicks and pushes and just aggravating the opposition instead of getting the ball and making the opposition pay, there's got to be a reason for that, and that can't be good. And Neil, Neil knows that, because he was sitting next to us, my views about this, that I could see things happening on there that I didn't like at all, and weren't what I would like to see from my team, to be perfectly honest. And as I say, Fabian Shaw, if I'd been referee, wouldn't have been on the pitch at 90 minutes. The other thing is my usual habitual annoyance. Why is it that when we get a throw in, it's a bloody embarrassment to her? How much do we pay our coaches? Every throw-in we had, nobody knew what they were doing. Never was it very positive. It's supposed to be an advantage when you've got the ball, and they're an embarrassment. I know I go on about this, but it is just an embarrassment, and it's time somebody did something about it. And then, good luck to them if they try. But that's the end. That's enough. Once I got the throw-ins, I'll stop now and carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest. I think the two performances were both completely different. We went to Luton. We knew it was going to be hard after what had happened to Lockyer. I still expected Newcastle to come out 2-1 winners.
Yeah.
That was my prediction. But unfortunately, we got caught up in the moment. And Luton, take nothing away from them, deserved the victory. They played really, really well. That was the best game. And look at what they've done. Since then, another win, back-to-back wins. In an important game that they won against Sheffield United. And sometimes you just have to say, at this time, they played better than we did. The Forest game was disappointing. The only thing about the Forest game, which I will say, is that it proved beyond all reasonable doubt what I'd said prior to him leaving the club, is that Chris Wood is still capable of doing a job in the Premier League. And he did do Newcastle. He did do Newcastle a big favour when he was at the club. And I know people were mocking me and saying, Steve Wraith says Chris Wood's this and Chris Wood's that. I'm not being funny. Those 3 goals were very, very, very well taken. And the guy can still finish. And that was why Eddie Howe wanted to take a gamble on him at the time. And he's, listen, I can see why Eddie Howe was upset that he left. We could do with Chris Wood in our team at the moment as an option to bring off the bench in games and change things. But I'm going to move on to the question that Alan Little posed in the chat whilst we were chatting there, Steve. And Eddie was asked about this in his press conference today. Has Eddie got a plan B, lads? Does he lack something regarding game management at times? Well, Eddie was asked this by Lee Ryder. I think it was him who asked it, and he asked it in a rather reluctant manner. And he fobbed it off onto the fans by saying, have you got a plan B? It's just that the fans are asking, and Eddie went, gosh, he was astounded to be asked the question. He then regained his composure when Lee again pushed the fact that it was the fans who were asking on social media, does he have a plan B? Because we don't think he does. And ultimately, he said, well, we do have a plan B. We have different formations. We have, we have different ways of pressing. We have different ways of utilizing the squad that we have. But it was interesting. It was interesting to hear. First of all, Lee Ryder put the question, and I was pleased that he did put the question out there. But he also said that, Lee asked him if he was going to go back to basics, going to Liverpool, and would he be going back to basics, i.e. defensive basics? And he said, look, basics are fundamental of your performance. He says, and we need to improve some basic parts of our defending. But he says, we have got many variations. We have got a plan. And he said some of the stat markers that we look at on a regular basis are still very strong, and we are being very careful not to go too far away from that. Lee then asked him if he was going to park the bus at Liverpool, which he said obviously not. He says we're always going to play in the same way. We're going to be solid, but we're going to be a threat to Liverpool. Otherwise, you're giving up before the the game's kicked off. So it was interesting to hear him ask the question, Steve. But has he got a plan B? Do you think is that a bit of bravado from Howe today? And he's laughed it off. I mean, he certainly was shocked to hear the question being asked.
Well, I suppose it depends on what your class as a plan B. I mean, for a lot of supporters, a plan B is a complete change of style, complete change of tactics, different formation. Go 4-5-1, 4-4-2, playing 3 at the back and filling your midfield to get with 5 if you're playing against a team that lines up similarly to you. All of those type of things. That's what people normally think of a plan B, or they think of when things aren't going quite well on the pitch, you go 2-0 down and you think, right, well, how do we press? Can we, it's early doors. Can we get back into this game? What's the plan going to be now? If the plan is to continue in the same formation, continue in the same way, and hope that you can break them down because that's the style of football that you've developed over a period of weeks and months on the training pitch, that's his plan B. It's little tweaks here and there, little slight alterations, people moving forward 5 yards, people moving across 5 yards, making the triangles tighter, pulling the triangles a little bit wider, making your wide men go down that little bit further before they cross the ball, getting the ball over the top. That's probably what he classes as his plan B, as opposed to a particular formation or something that he can drive forward with, Steve. So in that respect, he's perfect in his race to say, yes, I do have a plan B, and that's what it is. But it's sticking to me principles. The other aspect of it is if you're playing and you've got, playing against a team where you'd be benefiting from 2 holding midfielders as opposed to the one, or playing in a diamond, or all those type of things. All the things that Kevin, who's there on the chat now at the moment, him and I talk about quite regularly, along with you guys on our little chats where we talk about the style and the formation and the tactics that Newcastle might use or could use or don't use, but might benefit from. And I suppose that just like every other fan, Lee's picking up on that, and he's I think he was looking for something a little bit more deeper. I think he was looking for a reaction from Eddie, and perhaps the reaction he got isn't the reaction that he expected. I think he was probably looking at a completely different change of style of play, not going so gun-ho, not so much on the front foot, and being a little bit more controlled and a little bit more with less effort and more control, more using the ball than using your energy constantly, that type of thing. That's probably what the likes of Lee and some of the other guys in the press are looking at, especially when fitness is one of those things that's been marked out for Newcastle. But Eddie, again, he's used the stats to prove it wrong, and says, we're as fit as we were, we're doing the same amount of running as we were, we're just not getting the breaks, or because of the personnel, it's just a slight little mistake that can be made that gives it up and creates an incident and a goal. There's also that mental part of it, isn't it? When you think, Trippier's just literally half a yard further back, otherwise Chris would have been offside. Then you look at the other aspect of it. The ball goes wide, and again, plan B. What should plan B, or should it have not been slightly more to do with the personnel that he had? Would he have been better playing someone like Livramento wide on the left as a fullback, to negate the fact that Elanga is very, very quick and was always going to get past the likes of a Dan Burn if the ball's played over the top or played through? And again, these are the little things, these are the little tweaks. I've often said that if I did have a criticism, well, I used to have 2 criticisms about him. One was the substitutions that he made And the second one was the timing of those substitutions. Often substitutions were either like for like. And again, he's answered probably his own question when he said, that we have a style of play that we want to play. So he puts someone in, takes off a runner to put another runner in. Takes off Almiron because he wants to play Murphy or that type of thing. But I've always felt that the timing sometimes of his substitutions were not right. He seemed to change that. We seemed to get substitutions slightly earlier in the game since around about October time. And I thought, the penny's clicked. Or he's not necessarily the penny clicking, but he's seeing those adjustments a little bit earlier, needing to be made a little bit earlier during the game because he's watching what the opposition's doing and he's spotted a gap, he's spotted an error, he's spotted an area of weakness that he can exploit. But you can negate all that with the injury crisis that we've had, with the number of personnel that we've had out, and trying to drop the personnel into the squad, into that formation that perhaps is just a yard off pace. Not quite at the races in terms of the quality of the final ball or something like that in comparison to the player that they're coming in and replacing. So it's all very, very difficult, Steve, to actually pin something down to just a plan and as Lee said, a plan B. What is it? I think it's a multitude of things. I think there's a multitude of things that happen on the pitch. And I think that there's so many interchangeable factors. Mitch talks about three-dimensional chess quite often when it comes to tactics and styles. And I sit in the pub and we did it again the other night when the four of us were together, and I'm putting my fingers, I'm trying to show you how I think that this needs to come in and who slots in and all that type of thing. And obviously coaches all have their own different ways of getting their opinion over. But it shows you how technical the game's become, how technical we've become in terms of watching the game, looking at what the opposition's doing as well as what our players are doing, looking for the gaps ourselves. And now all of a sudden we're also top level coaches as well as top level critics, Steve.
Yeah. Is there a plan B, Mitch?
Look, I think Steve's pretty much got it when he says the changes that he makes sometimes are quite subtle. But he does make changes in how things work. I think why he persists with Dan Burn at left back is I think when we are at our most flowing and best, we have this system which allows Trippier to bomb on the right-hand side. And effectively, when we're in possession, it becomes back three. We'll Burn, Botman and Shearer, or Burn, Shearer and Lascelles. Then Trippier effectively becomes an additional right-wing attack. And the problem comes when we go down the left that Burn doesn't necessarily have the skill or the pace to materialise into Trippier Mark II on the opposite side. But I think Howe accepts that because of what he gets out of Trippier when that back four allows us to go to a three in possession. He also makes subtle changes within that 4-3-3. When we've got, say, Willock and Joe Linton on the left, see how they interplay and change. They can pop up in different positions. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, that's what Longstaff and Almiron are doing when we're at our flowing best. He doesn't make changes to say to go to two banks of four. I don't think you'll ever see Eddie do that. Really, really, really won't see that. He sometimes will make it more like a 4-5-1 and pull everybody into midfield to fill the midfield. But as we've seen, that often leaves the striker very much stranded. And again, that's where having a Chris Wood option up front would work, because he can actually hold the ball up and do something to bring more players into the game. I don't think you're ever going to see Eddie make wholesale changes to do something drastic, to change to something very different. I think what you'll see are always subtle changes and moves within the framework that he likes. Particularly with when you see him then put Wilson and Isaac on the pitch together. Very rarely are they what you would think of as a 9 and 10. Isaac's more often out wide. Yeah. And somebody else is playing in that middle role. And so again, I think it's something you'll always reel against. I don't think you'll ever see him play a traditional 4-4-2, for example. And maybe that's why it's taking time to introduce Hall into the system. He wants him to be doing something different to what he's traditionally used to doing in a role at left back, which is apparently not his preferred role anyway. And so, is there a plan B? Again, I don't think it's as simple as an answer as that. I don't think it's just as simple as, right, here's our plan B. We're going to go to an entirely different formation and lump the ball up the middle or something like that. I think he wants to stick to some certain values, but then make subtle but impactful changes around that. And my problem is we haven't had the players available to make those changes impactful.
George, is there a plan B? Have you seen it?
Yes, I'm sure there is, and I see evidence in different ways that he tries different things. But the last point Neil makes is an important one for anybody who's talking about this: is plan B. Any plan depends on the personnel available, and if he hasn't got the personnel on the bench to do what he wants to do, then he's stuck with making it plan 1.5 or plan 1 3/4. He never gets to plan B. But yes, I mean, and sometimes when he's tried plan B, it hasn't worked for her. Look at the Liverpool game, which we should have won. And because we went to a different style for the last 20 minutes or so, bang, bang, we'll lose 2-1. So, you know, it's yes, I see evidence that he does try different things. And Steve and Neil are right. Can you call it a plan B? He certainly makes attempts to do something different. You know, that's palpable from the stand if you watch carefully, and the way in which he moves people around as well, and the number of conversations he has, him and Tyndall have on the touchline with players as they're close to them, passing on instructions all the time. That's all about plan B for me. So yes, I do see that, but it's the last point Neil made and Steve made it as well, is that if you haven't got the personnel sitting on the bench to do these changes, then you're stuck with plan A perhaps a bit longer than you want to be. I agree with Steve. Perhaps it's because we sit together. Some of the timing of the substitutions are sometimes puzzling. They're either sometimes too short to make an impact. You know, the game's over before the substitutes got a chance to make an impact for me. But yes, I have to give him credit. You can see that he is trying different things, and the way he moves Gordon about, for example, and occasionally he'll switch Gordon and Miggy from one side to the other. Yeah, I think there's a plan B. It isn't as simple as that, but I see evidence that he does try doing different things during a game. If I have a slight criticism, we tend to be reactive rather than proactive. Our plan B is about when we're in trouble. I would like to say our plan B making somebody else in trouble. Now, I haven't seen evidence of that. It's usually, as I say, it's usually reactive. It's usually when we need to do something that the changes are made. I would like to see us have a plan B that was proactive and was put the opposition in trouble. I haven't seen much of that, I have to say. But to answer the question that was asked, yes, I think he does have a plan B.
Okay, lots of comments coming in about speculation on this player, that player, the other player. I'm not going to even go there on the show tonight because that's exactly what it is. It's rumours and speculation, and none of that does anybody any good or any favours at all. Let's face it. And the likelihood is that a lot of these stories which have been circulated, particularly on WhatsApp, and some I've seen now, bizarrely putting it out on their Twitter account. Not a wise move when the club's lawyers are sitting watching at home. And certain lawyers will be watching at home. But just ignore it. Just ignore it. We're all old enough and wise enough to know that this kind of rubbish gets circulated. We've laughed at it. We've genuinely laughed at it. And I'm sure there'll be further stuff coming out. But doesn't this always happen when a team goes through, a bad run of football at Newcastle? Don't believe what you read in the papers, they say, but certainly don't believe what you read on social media and in a WhatsApp group. Hilarious, some of them, mischievous, I would say, downright libelous. So ignore, and just concentrate on watching Newcastle hopefully get something at Anfield. Okay, going to move on, and it is time for the day I met. The day I met, where we ask you to send in photographs of you meeting somebody from Newcastle United, past or present. We've had one or two of these, but David has sent in this. He says, the day I met Darren Eales, pre-Seller Cup Saturday, he was laughing as he'd been asked if Livramento was close. He just laughed and said, who? I found out later on that Livramento was there watching, so that explained that. But David, thank you very much for that. And if you've got a photograph of you with a player or manager or director, past or present, send it in so I can play this lovely music. Neil Calvert, good evening. He says, question for today. What's your thoughts on Eddie using FFP to pour cold water on signings in the upcoming window? Smoke and mirrors, or do you think they'll wait till the summer? Again, press conference related. He did mention FFP 3 or 4 times today, Steve. He was asked directly about Calvin Phillips. Is it close? And he went, no. He refused to mention anything to do with transfers other than, FFP dictates what we do. We haven't had any conversations about anything, and that's that. So clearly not willing to talk about, potential incomings, outgoings, whatever. Wouldn't even contemplate, answering a question about the loan market. So he's not changed, Steve. He plays with a straight bat when asked these kind of questions. Clearly won't want to give much away, but I think we all know that we do need some players coming in. Also asked about the midfield situation, saying that fans believe that we need a number 6. Pointed to the fact that we'd signed a midfielder in the summer that can't play till August through no fault of our own. So again, a fairly straight battered performance by Eddie in the press conference. Is he using FFP to pour cold water on things, or is he just playing his usual game, Steve?
I think it's a combination of both, Steve. I mean, that was the fire blanket thrown over the spark, if ever I've known one. Dear me. He's basically told us nothing. I mean, defensive, very defensive. That just means that we're now going to have fans starting to think, oh, right, well, he's been asking for people, and there's nobody available, or they're not going to go into it, and that. Come February, that's something else for the walls start whinging about, because he hasn't been supported from upstairs, and that's because of what's happened in the previous 3 months and all the performances. And this is where sort of comments can very, very quickly backfire on a manager. The only people really who know what's going to happen in the transfer window are going to be the people upstairs and the manager himself. And if he's pouring cold water over it, it's because he doesn't want to have the conversation. Simple as that. He just wants to get on with what he's there for at the moment, which is to prepare his team for Liverpool on Monday night. The press conferences about Monday. That's what he wants to talk about. The easiest way he'll pour cold water on it is to just dismiss the whole thing. But as I say, the danger comes if nothing does happen in the next 5 weeks, and we go into the February set of fixtures, and there's been no additions to the squad, and then people are going to look back at what he said in December and go, well, he told with then, and that just shows he's not being supported, and blah blah blah. So as I say, it's a dangerous game to play, but it's a one that you can understand, because at the end of the day, nobody really knows what the situation is with FFP. We've got plenty of fans out there that drag up stats and drag up figures and go through various spreadsheets that they've created and try to say where things are. But only the people, only the money people themselves, the accountants at the club, and the people with the club spreadsheets who know exactly what they can and can't do. And again, that's a moving feast anyway. Will know really well where we stand with regards to FFP. You've also got the difficulty of, everyone's always said the January transfer window is the most difficult one. You know, who's available, who can you play, who can you bring in, the added sort of complication that you have of the African Cup of Nations, the Asian Cup being played as well, which means that potential targets might not be available to come in until perhaps February if you were looking at them, and then you run the risk if any of those potential targets pick up injuries during either of those competitions. So who knows, Steve? Supporters, we can listen to the rumours. We can delve into our own little memory banks and have our own little thoughts on who it is. You and I do it regularly. We'll throw names at each other. You know, a name will crop up, or we'll go into deep space and we'll try and come up with a name that nobody else has mentioned before, and say, I wonder if that's the sort of player that would fit in. But again, it's just entertainment, isn't it, for the masses? And it's up to Eddie at the end of the day with his coach and staff on who they want to fit in, whether he feels he can carry on until next August when Tonali comes back and is made available, whether or not he feels the injury crisis that he's had is starting to thin out a little bit, and he's going to have some of his players back. Who knows? But this is, how many times have I said it? This is why Eddie gets paid the big bucks and we don't. So.
Yeah, it's FFP. It's our three favourite letters, Mitch. Crops up every transfer window. But yeah, Eddie not giving anything away today.
No, quite right too. We can't, because the minute we come knocking on someone's door and someone said in a press conference, yes, we've got gazillions to spend, we are in bother because we're going to have our pants pulled down. So we'll have to play it in a cagey fashion, really. We can't say on the back of the Everton ruling that FFP only applies to us. We can't. What we've been given an example of, is a simple open and shut case of somebody blowing the roof off of FFP, even with lots of help from the Premier League to not do that. They still managed to do it. And if you think that they wouldn't delight in bending Newcastle United over and shoving a watermelon-sized Lego butt plug up our backside in terms of FFP breach and what kind of penalties they'd give us, they'd bloody love it. And so we have to be whiter than white. Otherwise, we'll just be hoisted by our own petard at the end of the day. We might, FFP may become irrelevant one day. That might be sooner. It might be later. But right now, we've got to play the game. And we don't do ourselves any favour by saying in public, yeah, this January we've got 400 million to spend. Because I'm telling you now, the first club we approach to buy a player, they'll say, we'll have 200 of that, thanks. And we'll just screw ourselves over. So we've got to play the game. It's. I think we have to also be very aware that if we go nuts in January, that affects what we're going to do in the summer and the following January and probably the following summer after that. Yeah, big spending in this window might have a knock-on effect for 3 windows. Whether we like that or not, and whether we're adding sponsorship and we're balancing the books in other ways, that's still a reality. So what we have to play a delicate little game of Jenga on as well is it's risk-reward. If we take that risk and spend big in January, we know the risk is we might not be able to spend big again for another 2 windows. And so we have to assess where we're at and what our chances of, say, qualifying for Champions League are versus qualifying for Europa versus winning a cup. And cut our cloth to suit that as well. I wish it was simpler. because the way everything's gone with the Big Six previously, the once again are experts at getting into the loft, pulling the ladder up and shutting the hatch before anybody else is trying to get on the ladder.
Yes.
And they've done it time and time again, and they've done it to us. And yeah, I mean, I think absolutely right. You look at Villa; they probably don't have that much FFP wiggle room. And if anybody thinks that the Premier League will look kindly on anybody who blows the top off of FFP, just look at what they did to Everton for a relatively small overspend. They spent time with Everton. They tried to tell Everton, look, you can't include this, don't include that, but we'll give you leeway on this. And they gave them the biggest COVID losses by almost a factor of 10 to the next people, which is a nonsense, by the way. They gave them transfer losses on things that they shouldn't be allowed to have transfer losses on. A player who they felt they could sign, who they had to get go because of a police case brought against him. And they wanted that in the books, which is a nonsense. Do we get the same afforded the same leeway for Tonali? Don't think so. And so we still have to play the game. Unfortunately, as frustrating as it is, there'll come a time where the game is either different or the game becomes more weighted in our favour. But again, we're probably 2 years ahead of schedule from this 5-year plan that we're told they originally had. We've reaped reward out of it financially already. We've reaped reward out of it in terms of getting praise off the football community for almost navigating through the group of death we were told we weren't going to win a point in. And so I think going forward, there's lots of things we can take out of that. But one thing we can't do is piss around with FFP, because honestly, the Premier League would love us to knack an FFP. They'd love it because it would give them a little window of opportunity to show their power, in inverted commas, to the people that whose noses were out of joint, that eventually that the sale was allowed to go through.
FFP, George. Eddie says he thinks it's going to be around for years in the press conference, but yet the Super League that's still hanging around like a bad smell, George. I'm not sure, and especially the way that certain clubs have pushed the boundaries. Obviously, some awaiting punishment if they can ever get them to court. Man City, Chelsea, for obvious reasons. FFP might not be around for years, but at the moment, short term, he has got to deal with this, and he keeps mentioning it.
Well, he's got to. I mean, that's why he's manager in Newcastle, and I can't criticise the press for asking, because they're asking on our behalf as well as their own, because I'm sure fans like to know how many fans even begin to understand FFP, including myself. All the comebacks and all the queer twists that could be. But the lads are right, Steve and Neil, that were we to make a mistake, by God would feel it. There's no doubt about that. They're just itching to have a go. However, one thing that hasn't been mentioned is I think the biggest problem for FFP now is the European Court ruling. And that could actually have a bosoning effect on FFP like it did on transfers. I think that's something that that all of the leagues across Europe are going to have to think seriously about, because it is a landmark judgment for the European Court to come out and say that was wrong, to say that they couldn't have a European league. And yes, lots of clubs, some of them in this country, have come out and said, well, it doesn't matter, we're not going to get involved anyway. Yeah, they'll all say that, but let it start up and somebody start making some money, and by Jove, they change our bloody minds then, no doubt about it. So, I think you're absolutely right, Steve, and I think Eddie's right to coin it in that way, that let's work as though it is going to be around for a long time and keep Newcastle clear of the league's lawyers, because that's the last thing we need, is for them to have a pop at us. In terms of what Eddie says, well, can I remind you, he had a press conference last year and he virtually said we were penniless nearly. And the next day, Alexander Isak walked in the door for 63 million. so that's the sort of game he's happy to play. Well, yeah, why can't he? The lads are right. We just got to look at a player and his value goes up 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, depending on who it is. So I'm happy to let Eddie play these games in the best way he can, because it's important for our club, it's important for our team, and important for us as supporters that he's laying things out that are setting the foundations possibly for the next fabulous, I would say, 10 years for Newcastle United. And if that's how he's going to do it, well, good luck to him, and he has my support. But as I say, 1 minute we've got nothing, the next minute Alexander Isak walks through the door.
Yeah, good point you make there, George. Good point you make. Every now and then we do shake the show up a little bit, and it's nice to bring an old face back. Good to have Elliot back on the show. Two cannibals talking. What's for dinner, said the first. Leftover stew, said the second. God's sake, replied the first. Not him again.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Very good, Elliot. Got quite a few from Elliot to keep us going through 2024. So we're looking forward to re-adding that to the Amigos. Okay, lads. Tonali, somebody we haven't spoken about for a while. But obviously somebody who is, continuing to train with the club. And Jason Foster says, even and all, do you think if we had Tonali available in our current squad, it would be healthier? I just hope he's taking a big pay cut after all that's happened. I think it's caused the damage, says Jason. I don't think he'll have taken a pay cut. I've got to be perfectly honest, Steve. But the fact that he is allowed to train with the squad is a massive bonus, as opposed to, what happened with Tony at Brentford, for example. But Tonali, I think would have made a hell of a difference in the European games. I mean, the guy got to the semi-finals of the Champions League with his former club last year. So, from our perspective, it's been a big, big blow. But I think it would have made a hell of a difference, Steve. And Eddie Howe, again, in his press conference today, did point to that gaping hole in his midfield, which is being caused by no fault of our own.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at the first game of the season against Villa, the way that Tonali took a grip of that game, the goal after, 10, 12 minutes. You looked at him and thought, we've got a baller here. We've got a real quality addition to our squad. And then you saw his game drift off, and he was injured. I think he went on international duty. Then we heard that he wasn't training. Then there was the stories that he kept nipping back to Italy. And it was obvious that there was something going on. Nobody imagined that it was anything as serious as it turned out. But all of that seemed to really weigh on the lad. And his performances when he was available, I think I can only recall two performances that got anywhere close to matching the way that he played in the first fixture. Would he be an asset now? Absolutely. The Tonali that we saw in the first game of the season would have been a marvellous asset to the squad. It's interesting, isn't it? Villa, there was also a player at Villa who was caught up in the same sort of thing, and it's just mentioned. I think he's still available. I don't think anything's happened to that in that one. It's still being investigated, yet they came down on Tonali very, very quickly. And it's just unfortunate that the ban lasts for the entirety of the season. But again, I mean, this comes back to whether the right questions were asked, whether the right due diligence was done at the time. We talked about it when the whole case erupted and the news came out that something's gone on, and there was questions asked across social media and on our little panel here about whether or not we'd done the right due diligence, why we didn't know about it. It turns out that from all intents and purposes, it was kept very much quiet. Something that only Tonali was aware of, and possibly his agent. or immediate family, although it was even mentioned at some point that even the immediate family didn't know what he was going through. It's just one of those things, Steve, and it's just a really, really difficult position that the football club found itself in. But it's a man down, isn't it? It's one less player, and at a period when we've had so many injuries, a player of that quality being available at Eddie Howe would have been a huge asset to Newcastle United, a huge asset to Eddie and his coaching staff. Maybe that was his plan B. Maybe his plan B could have been that he would have had Tonali playing either as a number 6 if necessary, or he could push him wide onto the right, as he did play, in a couple of his appearances. But we'll never know, Steve. We'll never know. We just hope that we've got a quality player coming back next August. That's all we can do. That's all we can sit and talk about. The quality player. Would it have helped our FFP if situations had been different, if we'd known? What I would say, just going back to the FFP that we spoke about there, and just something that I picked up on, when Eddie said that FFP thinks it's going to be around for quite a long time, I think FFP will only be around for as long as the top 6 start pulling themselves away financially. And I think that when the other 14 twig on, that there's been a rabbit pulled out of a hat by the top 6, and I think at that point, the 14 will go, hang on a minute, we're getting restricted on what we can spend here. This isn't right. They're allowed, because of the way that the whole thing's been set up, they're allowed to get away with murder in terms of what they can and can't do, because of the amount of money that they're turning over. We've got benefactors that would help us in our football club, and we could, just because the money was coming from an alternative source. And I think they'll reach a point where the other 14 will revolt. And I think that there'll be a change in the FFP, either on a cash basis in terms of what you can and can't spend, or I can see somebody taking this to the nth degree, and whether it starts off in UEFA because of the threat of the Super League, and they open the door a little bit more, and that gives us an opportunity, or gives clubs an opportunity to spend a little bit more, and the figures go up. Because the other thing with FFP is, as the TV deals are coming in, although the TV deal we've got actually turned out to be just a longer deal and the same amount of money, there's not exactly a load more money being put in on these TV deals that have come in, but there'll be an awful lot more money coming in because of those TV deals in terms of sponsorship that clubs are picking up. So I think there'll be changes there. But on Tonali, a big miss. That's what we can say about him. A player of that quality is a big miss to our football club.
Okay, your views, Mitch?
Well, like we just said about how having a plan B, and that relying on having a quality of player available to make the subtle changes more impactful. Italian international, being in the semi-finals of the Champions League, yeah, that's an impactful change. Of course he's missed. You're quite right about what you say about the opening game of the season, Steve. We looked at him there and thinking, Christ, we bought a good one here. Yeah. And whether people were still concerned whether he was happy to be here or not, etc., etc. At the end of the day, it's quite obvious he's a baller, and he would have made a difference in the squad if available. And so I don't think you can say anything else other than that. That he was a miss in every way, shape or form, and has been. Now, we'll never know what Milan knew. We'll never know what his agent knew. The complexity of the gambling laws in Italy are mind-blowing in themselves. The way that Italian prosecutors move on things, they tend to only move on cases that they know they can win. And the biggest difference with Tonali and any other player is Tonali's put his hands up and gone, yeah, I did that. And it's not about did he bet on football or not. It's about the type of betting he's done in different ways on different platforms. There was a suggestion that they were using a burner phone between a few of them on a bench in an Italian national game to play blackjack and casino slots while they were on the bench, which is madness, really. And embarrassing for the Italian FA. So is it any wonder they want to kick some arse? Of course they do. Should we have done more due diligence? Well, the thing about addictions is people don't like to share it with everybody. So you've really got to know. I mean, Christ. Again, I've talked about somebody I know very, very well. He's a personal friend of mine. And the first thing a lot of us knew about his gambling habit was when his mugshot was on the front of the bloody Chronicle. And we used to drink with him every Saturday before the match. We used to go to away games with him. And yes, we knew he liked to bet. But we didn't know he was betting with other people's pension money on a spread of corners in Kazakhstan second division games to try and make up the losses he was making. You know? And that's a true story. That's somebody we know personally.
Yeah.
And like I say, most of us genuinely didn't know how bad his problem was until his mugshot was on the front of the bloody Chronicle and he was off to do time. And now spends his time trying to let people not get into the situation he does. So I won't have it that somebody must have knew and this one must have knew. Because when you've been there firsthand and you didn't know, yeah, maybe he's had in England, yeah, he likes a bet. But there's a big jump from he likes a bet to embezzling £400,000.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so again, this is it. Most people with addictions are functional addicts of one form or another. And they're only become non-functional when the wheels come off.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to kind of respect that a little bit. It hurts, because it hurts everybody at Newcastle United. I'm quite sure some of the players are hurt by it and want to kick his arse in training. I suspect he's had a few little Achilles taps from 2 or 3 people in training, and he'll learn a hard lesson, a very hard way. But at the same time, I'm sure that part of his rehabilitation will be the togetherness of that squad and the togetherness that Eddie Howe preaches with the back room. However, some of that togetherness doesn't seem to be there at the moment. And that frustrates me, because he's going to need that and more. Coming back into the game, I'm sure there's many an opposition fan has an interesting chant lined up for him, and he'll face that for the rest of his career. And so it's up to us to support him in every way, shape and form that we can, because it benefits all of us if we can do that.
I suppose on the plus side as well, you've got to say that from Tonali's perspective, now that it's out in the open, the pressure's off.
Yeah.
In terms of the mental side of what he was going through. And you've got to hope that what we get back is a far more relaxed, a far better footballer who hasn't got the baggage weighing him down that he had. And I think it's going to be to his betterment. The other thing I would say, Mitch, is that you mentioned there that he's taken a few taps on the ankles. Thank God there hasn't been a full squad to kick him in training.
Very true. Very true. George, just interested in your point of view before we go to the ad break.
Yes.
Just about Tonali. What's your views?
Well, he is a miss. I mean, he is an interesting and a very clever footballer. I've seen 1 or 2 criticism. He doesn't run here and he doesn't run there. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. His sense of position is brilliant, and he gets there at the right place at the right time, in my view. And yes, we have got a footballer on our hands. Absolutely amazing. As to all the stuff about the gambling, well, Neil's absolutely right. The biggest thing about addiction is secrecy. And I wish I had a penny for every pound for every court I've sat in North Tyneside and elsewhere where I've sat and listened to people having their misdemeanors read out in court and looking at the faces of their wives, their husbands, or their fathers or their mothers, who clearly didn't know any of it. You know, the hurt that was in their faces when the prosecution reads out the list of things that they've done. And then the final thing is, there's one defence lawyer who I know who used to work in North Tyneside a lot. He doesn't know. Always used to ask these people the same thing: what's the most important thing that's happened to you since this all started? And the answer, 100%, was always getting caught. Getting caught so I could get rid of it. Get it off my chest, get it off my back, get it off my family. And I think that's where Tonali is at the moment. He's trying to recover from all of that. And it wouldn't surprise me at all that if his family and even his girlfriend, stroke wife, didn't know anything about it either. So, all of that. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but with addiction, it ain't no such thing as a hindsight, I'm afraid. It's a horrible thing to get involved in. And take some getting shot off. So, but I'd look forward to the days back. We've got a real footballer on our hands, and the squad will help get over it. And I'm sure the club's helping now for him to get over it, and so can the fans. I mean, I rejoiced when it was announced that he had a problem, that he was warming up on the touchline for a game, and the crowd came out with his song. I thought that was absolutely great. And let's have more of that when he does come back. And he'll be a better player for Newcastle United.
Lots of love and positivity in the chat for Tonali. And Nigel says, you'll be fine once your squad gets some energy. Your style relies on tempo and energy, which you don't have right now. Need a big squad to play like that. You'll have that at some point. You're right. Lee, we did talk about this earlier. That's utter poppycock is what I'm going to say, Lee. Ignore it. At your peril, share it. Don't share it, mate. Honestly.
You're very polite, Steve. Bollocks would have been my word.
It's a load of, Lee, honestly, it's a load of rubbish, mate. It really is. You couldn't script that. Really, you couldn't. And believe you me, I've written a script. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, halfway through the show. Time for the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website, skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks again to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you'd like to order some, then give them a call on 01768 210 102. Go to the website, mrvickys.co.uk, or drop them an email, info@mrvickys.co.uk. A big thanks to United Group Travel. They're a family firm based in Morpeth with pickups throughout the northeast. No strangers on our tours, just people you haven't met yet. They've got a presence on Facebook and a website, unitedgrouptravel.com. If you want to make a booking, give them a call on 01670 632 460 or mobiles 0791 666 4174 0795 71 41654. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors. Let us look after you in your time of need. They're based on Old Durham Road in Gateshead, and you can contact them at their website, darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Email darren@darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk, or give them a call, 0191 478 2730. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And a big thanks to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. If you want to help the channel, hit the thumb up to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and share to your other social media. You can also pay a one-off fee of £25 to get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. Go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and click membership, or put your smartphone over this QR code. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make some donations virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. We're also a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast providers. Just search NUFC Matters. I'm also a part of the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show. You can listen to that Monday to Friday, 7 till 9 at thetooneuk.com. We've also got an event coming up next year. It's in January the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. It's an evening with Nobby Solano. Tickets are available on Voucher for £20. Don't forget, Supermac and Gibbo do every pre-match at Louis Liquor Store. It's free entry, children welcome, and there is great food by Fed's Fried Chicken. They're usually on pre-match and sometimes post-match at Louis Liquor Store. Don't forget as well, I've got a Facebook page, and a lot of people say, well, I'm not on Twitter, I can't send you a Toon Lookalike, or I can't send you a tweet of the week. But if you get yourself onto Facebook, if you're on there, search for NUFC Matters. We've also created a Supermac and Gibbo official page as well. It's a group, so if you want to follow them and you've got a question for Malcolm and Gibbo when they come back in the new year, then please add yourself to that group as well. Just means that we can find your comments a little bit easier. Okay, it is time for Tweet of the Week. I just want to thank everybody as well for listening to what I said and keeping them a little bit cleaner, because we did have that email who certainly made a request that they enjoyed the show, but it was getting more like a chubby brown 10-minute section. So we've jacked it in. Somebody sent us this. Apparently this went to the cup final in the 1970s, lads.
Yeah.
And somebody was asking, does anybody know where it is? I mean, it's in good nick there, by the way. I mean, it's a colour photograph, so clearly taken in and around that period of time. And looking at the club crest on the side, maybe it's had a bit of a refurb.
Is it not up in Ashington?
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Somebody was asking on social media, does anybody know where this is? That's definitely had an upgrade since the 70s, Mitch, hasn't it?
I'm sure it went to the Charity Shield and the cup finals in the 90s.
90s, yeah. Definitely.
That it went.
And that would explain the modern badge.
That's
but
right.
I'm sure when I was living up Pigswood Way, I'm sure that used to be parked on the road near Asda in Ashington.
There we go.
Anybody know where it is? Down there.
Anybody know where it is, what it's doing? Did it go to the Carabao Cup final, maybe? Anybody knows anything about it?
I'm the fire tender.
Yes. Sean Casey, I'm not going to read this out, but I did laugh at this, mate. Tensions will be high this transfer window. I hope the in-the-know accounts don't add to it with their rumours. That's what I'm going to say. Sean, the irony was not wasted when I read that, mate. Very good. I did like this as well. Somebody sent me some photographs of Luton Town away. There you go. People saying, hey, God, what, it goes through people's houses? Yes, a Premier League that goes through people's houses. There you go. That's exactly what it's like. It's like a scene from Coronation Street, that one bottom left.
Did you see the video from the West Ham fans chanting, "We can see you in the bath"?
Yeah.
That was just brilliant.
Absolutely fantastic. We don't eat eggs, meat, fish, dairy, or gluten. What would you recommend? A taxi, says the waitress. And breaking news about the referee. Michael Oliver has been appointed as referee for the Sunderland versus Newcastle FA Cup tie. Yes, that went the rounds as well over the last week. Thanks for this one, Paul. He says, remember to set your scale back £10 this week.
Yeah, it's probably right.
And Dad, can you tell me what a solar eclipse is? No, son. Okay, I'll ask Mrs. O'Brien.
Oh, dear.
See, we're doing them for the intellectuals now, George.
Yeah.
Paddy walks into the site office carrying a flask. Murphy, what have you got there then? Paddy, 'tis a new flask. Murphy, what's it do then? It keeps hot things hot and cold things cold. Murphy, so what you got in it then? 2 cups of coffee and an ice cream.
Oh
I
dear.
feel like we could have come after her now.
Yeah.
And
God,
here's the
yes.
world's worst madness tribute act, lads.
Ah, classic.
That looks like a former Joe of this parish, to be honest. That could have been the lookalike back in the old days. Definitely looks like our old friend Joe. Grandma crocheted a shark blanket.
Oh, dear.
And dear NUFC Twitter, success isn't linear. Please support and back Eddie Howe. What people think it looks like success and what it really looks like success. I did like that. Very good. Anybody who knows this show knows we're not big fans of VAR, and neither is this former referee. Seen on Sky recently. Donald, thanks for this one. So I was in London and I said to a passerby, "Excuse me, how do I get to Paddington?" He said, "Steely's marmalade sandwiches. That should work." And Soda Pop Kid, thanks for this. Look, a shooting star. Make a wish. I'd like to get married. Oh, sorry, it's a plane. And Mariah Carey being summoned back to hell on December the 26th, says Ian.
Yes.
I did like this album cover. If Carlsberg did albums for football teams, who would this be? Said Stephen Kennedy. We can get away with that because it is an actual album cover. But answers on a postcard, I guess, Stephen. And Snowman for sale needs repairs. $25. Thanks. Thanks, Jimmy. And looks like rain. Nah, it's way too sunny today. Weatherspoons, lads.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh, God.
And if you are experiencing joint pain, you probably shouldn't be holding the lit end, says Jimmy.
Oh.
Fair comment.
You know, I like me Star Trek ones, lads. Captain, someone's offering to extend our ship's warranty. Nice modern day take there. And tweet of the week says, Jimmy, the Colonel Holiday 3-way, twice the breasts, thighs and legs. Write your own jokes, he says. Thank you. And for sale, parachute only, used once, never opened. Thanks, Jimmy. And never before seen image of the Acme company president and his late wife.
his late wife, yes.
And never mind Elf on the Shelf, lads. Here comes Andy Pandy on the brandy.
Oh, very good.
And I needed my pants hemmed quickly, so I called Taylor Swift.
Oh, dear.
And last few. Thanks for the iPad, Grandma.
Oh, good.
And Sunderland eggs, because the eggs are in bread.
Oh, dear.
Thanks, Keith. Top 2. I'm still confused as to why I need to put my cake in the oven at 120 degrees.
Oh, dear me.
And the winning one this week is this. A truck loaded with Vicks Vapor Rub overturned on the highway. Amazingly, there was no congestion for 8 hours.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for keeping us going through the Christmas period. If you've got a tweet, then send it to our Facebook page or send it to one of the lads on Twitter. Do the lads think De Gea would be good for us? Says Tom. Ken Robinson. We have to replace Dubravka, but De Gea's not the answer. If I knew who the answer was, I'd be getting Eddie's wages. But he likes Dubs, so I don't think he'll change. There was another question, I think, from Mozza. Do you think Phillips is worth a shot given the loan fee? 7.5 million's been the fee that's been chucked around. So, Steve, let's just focus on those two players. Right. Eddie said we've got financial fair play restrictions and nobody's close. But ultimately, those two names won't go away. De Gea and Phillips. Would you settle to have those two players come in on loan till the end of the season to get us out of a bit of a rut that we're in?
Fresh faces, Steve. That's what I would say first. And secondly, fresh faces that don't impact FFP. So you've immediately got the fact that one of them is a free agent and the other one's coming in on loan. De Gea, is he the answer? Is he what we're looking for? Well, we're one keeper down. So it immediately puts us back into the frame that Eddie's wanted all season, which is 4 goalkeepers as part of his squad. and obviously including Gillespie in that. Is he a class act in terms of a goalkeeper? Yes. He wouldn't have been getting paid so much at Man United, and he wouldn't have lasted so long at Man United if he was a poor goalkeeper. For all the critics that he had at Manchester United, he invariably, by the end of the season, ended up as their top player of the season on a number of occasions. Good shot stopper. Always prone, like most goalkeepers, prone to the odd mistake here and there. For some reason, the new manager came in and didn't want him. Wanted someone who could play with their feet, and then went out and bought a goalkeeper who can't play the ball with his feet, which was fascinating.
Or his hands.
Or his hands, yes, exactly. Chris Packets. And it just goes to show, doesn't it? I wonder how much of De Gea moving on was to do with the fact that he was allegedly on £350,000 to £400,000 a week, and Manchester United were looking to sort out their own FFP and to reduce the burden of their wage packet and the salaries that were going out the door. Something that a football club of the stature of Manchester United would probably never want to admit. But De Gea hasn't played since leaving Manchester United in the summer. I think he would be an asset. I think it would be a boost. I think any player coming into Newcastle's squad at the moment to freshen it up, a fresh face, etc. New ideas, new set of skills, new voice in the changing room, new experience among the squad. Both of them internationals. Phillips, yeah, we've seen various press reports saying £7.5 million is a loan fee. Is it true or not? We don't know. All we've got to go by that is what's written in the Daily Mirror and the Daily Star and the Sun, etc., etc. Only the clubs, when it comes to the negotiating, would actually know what was going on there in terms of a fee being paid. This is a new thing that's come in over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, isn't it? Paying a fee for someone, as well as taking on their salaries and this type of thing. So I think both of them would be assets, Steve. Put it that way. And I think our squad is in need of a freshen up. The big freshen up is going to come, however, in the summer. And what's going to be just as fascinating is who leaves the squad as much as who we bring in. I mentioned it on a show just a couple of weeks ago where I talked about the deadwood. It wasn't meant in a derogatory way. It was just very much the fact that the number of players that we've got in our squad, despite the injuries, who have never had a look in, never played a game, either been out injured throughout the entire period, or not available, or simply not selected. Players that were there to make the numbers up. And again, this is what makes it difficult for the spreadsheet guys, because there are certain rules tied into your squad now where you've got to have so many players that have come in and are part of your squad who have been there as youngsters, been there as academy, homegrown is one of the phrases. Then you're not homegrown, but you're not overseas player, etc., etc. So there's a lot of moving parts to a squad at the moment, and we got caught up in that with the likes of Dummett. And we've got the homegrown side of Richie, who's come on recently, with Emil Kraft, who's been out for a long time, Manquillo, who hasn't kicked a ball all season, and doesn't look like he will be for a long stretch. So these are the sort of players. We've got Gillespie as a goalkeeper who probably will never play for Newcastle. Contract coming up towards its end in July as well, so there's going to be movement. There's no question about that, and that's just as fascinating as I say. But in terms of the two names that have been mentioned, yes, I think they would both be an asset to our squad.
Okay, Mitch.
Totally agree on De Gea. De Gea has been posting enough hints on his Instagram page, etc., that he's ready to come back to football. We've got absolutely no doubt the reason he was shown the door at Man United was about his contract. They would never admit that. They wouldn't want that to be public. But 100%. And you look at how the Man United fans have reacted to Onana coming in and De Gea going, and they're desperate for him to come back. There's no doubt about that, even though De Gea does have the odd rig in him. There's no doubt he's a quality keeper. And the question is, are you hungry enough to come here for 6 months and show what you can do? And then we'll have another, exactly, Gary, we'll have another conversation in the summer and take it from there. If he's hungry enough to want to come back into football at the top, I'm quite sure anybody who was hungry enough would take a deal like that. You know, he doesn't necessarily need pots of cash because he's already a very wealthy individual. But he'll also have a worth, a self-worth, that he'll want reflected in any contract that we agree. And that would probably be the challenge with him. Because you stick him in even on a short-term contract at a certain value, and I'm quite sure there'll be parity clauses in 4 or 5 different players' contracts, and then suddenly it costs you a hell of a lot more money in the long run.
Yeah.
That's when a free transfer is not a free transfer. But would he be an asset to the squad? Yeah. You know, the bear shit in the woods. Of course he would be. Would I have him over Dubravka? 100%. Dubravka we've got now is not the one that we had previously. He's lost something. The hokey-cokey that he does on his line when he doesn't seem to want to command the box. For someone who was lauded as being better with his feet than Pope, I'm not convinced he is. And there seems to be communication issues for me. Just my personal feeling. Phillips is another interesting one. Remember, I watched a lot of Leeds with the Leeds lads, and there was a 6-month period where Phillips under Bielsa was the number 1 central midfielder in the Premier League for me.
Yeah,
I've seen enough of them. Proper box to box, was a dominant force in midfield. Seemed like he could do everything, almost Gerrard-like. He could do the dirty stuff. He had a shot in him. He could ping the ball around. If we can get that, Phillips, yes, please. However, ever since he's gone to Man City, there's been question marks over his desire. There's been question marks over his fitness. He even returned to Man City from England duty and had Pep taking the piss out of his weight. And so, and he's another one of these players, like Calvert-Lewin and like Tom Davis, who's ended up at Sheffield United, who have one eye on the Premier League and one eye on the front cover of Vogue magazine. When he rocks up at a training ground looking like something out of the Mr. Men. You know, I don't need that kind of circus and don't want that kind of circus, thanks. Make your mind up, what are you, kid? And if you can show me that you want to be that that player that you were under Bielsa, the one that got the big move to Man City, yeah, I'll have that all day long. I'm just not convinced that's what we'll be getting. And that's what worries me about it. He seems to tick all the boxes of what we are missing from our midfield. And yet, he comes with a almost like a mystery bag edition that you don't know which one you're going to get. And it's a big gamble, particularly if it's a £7 million loan fee at the end of the season and how much of his wages are we picking up. If we're not convinced that we're getting the real deal. And that, I think we're only going to know if we actually do it.
Yeah.
Okay, George, your thought on those two players?
Well, on those two, I agree with the notion that we could do with some fresh blood. That's brilliant. De Gea, I've got no problem about. I've said it on here before when he was first mentioned. He looks like the sort of guy who's kept himself fit, and he looked pretty fit the little bits I've seen of him. What he hasn't got, and what would be in our favour, is game time. If he could come here for a short period and get some game time, that would be to his benefit as well as ours. So I've got no problem with De Gea. And I subscribe to some of the things Neil said about Dubravka. He doesn't seem to be the same Dubravka we've had before. I think I worry about some of the little chats I see on the pitch at Luton and against Nottingham Forest that were going on, and I wonder what all that's about. And I wonder how the people who were, really criticising Nick Pope feel now, because since Nick Pope disappeared, we've been leaking goals like a bloody sieve. So I don't know. Yes, Dubravka would be a good choice in my opinion. A national talented goalkeeper. It looks like somebody who keeps himself fit, but he needs game time, and we can give him game time and some money to put in his bank, which he's not getting at the moment. And even if it is just till the summer, gives us a chance to think about what we want to do after that, because Neil's right. Gillespie can't stay much longer, surely, in the position he's in without getting any games. So maybe there's some reshuffling to be done anyway. As to Calvin Phillips, well, I think I've mentioned on here before that I read very closely once I seen the rumours about this issue about him coming back from an England training camp, being so heavy, so overweight. His own manager wouldn't put him in the team for nearly 5 weeks. Didn't think he was fit enough. Well, yeah, that is up to the trainers, but my God, what sort of a professional lets himself go like that when you're away on international duty? It just says something about him, about his professionalism. That's what would worry me. And is that what's coming? Yes, Neil's right. It Leeds, he was the most talented player you could see in midfield, but has all the money and all the stardom changed something in the lad? I don't know. But I wouldn't, for the sort of money they're talking about, I wouldn't be risking Phillips. I'd be looking elsewhere. But Dubravka, yes, welcome. Let's give it a go. And
De Gea,
rather, and let's give it a go and put some pressure on the people that are already there.
Okay, lots of interesting comments coming in. What club in the world is paying 7.5 million to have Phillips on loan? Absolutely nobody, says Benny. City know that we're the right move, but they're good at business and they're trying to con us, which is interesting. Lots of comments coming in from you, and thanks for that. And great numbers tonight. Never take it for granted. Over 450 watching live tonight. So thank you for your support as always. And going to move on to Toon Lookalike before we look to the Liverpool game. A shortage of these this week, but the ones that you've sent are very, very good. I've had this one a couple of times, and it was good to see Sir Alan Partridge's account put this one up. A very, very good likeness of those two characters. This one was sent in late. It looks like Sean Longstaff from Jimmy in the background. I didn't have time to edit it, but it's the kid at the forefront. You can just make him out. It does look, if you're watching on the TV, you'll be able to see it, but that is very Sean Longstaff. Like Daryl Gurney from the Dart and Andy Bell from Erasure.
Very good. Huh?
It's not bad, not bad. Had this one sent in of Keith Patterson. Very like him. Keith with hair. Tielemans of Leicester looks like Keegan Butcher Baker of EastEnders. That's pretty good, lads.
Yes, very good.
Pretty good. That's a Tom Dixon special. And there's another one from Tom Sidney Bernstein from Beverly Hills Cop and Roberto Firmino.
Wow.
He's on a bit of a roll, is he? Tom on his birthday. And there's another one. Garnacho and Klaus Kinski.
Kinski, the actor, yeah.
Again, pretty good, Tom. You've got your glasses on this week. And another one from Tom, Ted Mosby and Nicholas Bentner.
Yeah, different colour hair, but yeah.
Four in a row from Tom. We'll give him that this week because it's his birthday. Lookalike from Mozza, Sukic and Big Dan Byrne.
It's a good one, that.
It is.
Very good. And Catherine Moore. Is it just me or does Owen Hunt from Grey's Anatomy look like Dan Byrne?
I can see that, yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Another one. Very good. Anyway, thank you, Catherine. New face in there. Tim, Merry Christmas, he says. And here's a topical lookalike. Martin Lukeman from the Darts and Buster Bloodvessel.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
And This one was sent in of me without attaching it to a lookalike. Dickie Bingo. Banjo songs to make love to. I'm not really seeing the likeness, but thanks for that. I'll certainly
we can see it. We can see it.
I'll certainly not be buying the album. And Mitrovic from NUFC Geordie.
That is
instead
good.
of Tiger Waliti, which was somebody from some kind of show. I've got no idea what it is. Never even heard of him. But looks like Mitrovic. I would say yes. Top two, Liam Kennedy and Luke Littler.
Yes.
That's from Joe Slatham. Thank you for that. And the winner this week, Rob Hanaway, House of Gucci and War Sandro.
Yes. Wow.
Very good, Rob. You are the winner this week. The last one of 2023. If you've got lookalikes, and they are definitely getting better. Not one Steve Hasty lookalike there this week. There might be one next week, though. You never know. Get them over to us. Send them to the Facebook page, nufc matters, or send them to us on Twitter. No, we've got no scunny.
Like Steve Hasty. If there'd been a dog on, it would have been on for bloody ages. He got a one that he didn't like of himself, and that didn't stay on very long, did it?
Exactly, George. Exactly. I'm glad you spotted it.
It's called the power of the. It's called the power of the button, George.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, sir. Got to be careful to get his own back.
Exactly. So, as I was saying, Newcastle versus Liverpool away on New Year's Day, 8 o'clock kickoff live on Sky Sports. Usually we would have Toon Stato and Scunny Mag to give us their away day and to give us the Toon stats, but not today. Both of them are travelling away for New Year. Safe journey, lads. I think I may well have something from Scunny Mag for doing the Eddie Howe press conference tomorrow, but Andre is on his way to Denmark to celebrate with the family. So I hope they have a safe journey and look forward to getting them back on next week's show. But yes, Newcastle kick off 8 o'clock at Anfield, live on Sky Sports, a full away end, despite the fact that it's such an awkward kickoff time for Newcastle United supporters. Newcastle have scored the opening goal in 3 of their last 4 visits to Anfield. And went on to lose all of those games. The most recent point at Anfield came by an equaliser in second half added time. Eddie Howe, of course, speaking to the media today, confirmed that Jamal Lascelles is unlikely to be a long-term injury, but wasn't 100% sure whether he would make it back for this particular game. Joe Willock and Harvey Barnes are some way off a return. No updates on long-term absentees such as Murphy, Anderson, Pope or Target. And as we've already discussed, Sandro Tonali remains ineligible until the end of the season. And this is, by the sounds of it, the first 2 games of next season as well. Having played 19 Premier League games, now officially halfway through the season, so suspension thresholds have now altered to a 2-match ban for any player who collects 10 bookings in the first 32 Premier League games. So a collectible sigh of relief for certain players at our club at the moment. Anthony Gordon leads our list with 7 Premier League yellows. He's 1 ahead of Bruno Guimaraes. So those are the 2 names to watch out for. As for Liverpool, Alcantara, Matip, Tiskmas, Robertson all miss out. Alexis McAllister is doubtful. Diogo Jota has made a successful return from injury, though, and is available. Ahead of our visit to Anfield, Liverpool won 2-0 against Burnley on Boxing Day, and they are currently top of the Premier League. This is set to be Mo Salah's last game before he heads off to AFCON, the African Cup of Nations, kicking off, of course, and he will be representing Egypt. He's failed to score in any of his last 4 appearances against Newcastle. So if you're going to go to the bookies, you might as well stick him down as first goal scorer for this game at the weekend. Wataru Endo will also be off with Japan to the Asia Cup following our visit. So the last 2 games for them. At home so far this season, Jurgen Klopp's side are unbeaten in all 9 Premier League games, winning the first 7, and they've drawn the last 2, albeit against Manchester United and Arsenal. Since losing 2-1 to Leeds in October 2022, Liverpool are unbeaten at Anfield in 21 Premier League matches. The referee is Anthony Taylor. This will be his 2nd game in charge of a Newcastle fixture. He took charge of the 2-2 draw at Wolves in October. And on VAR, don't talk to us about VAR, especially at Liverpool. Shadows and what goes with shadows. Stuart Atwell is in charge of VAR. If you're staying in town, the Salt Market Social in North Shields will be showing the game with free admission. City Centre bars with live coverage includes Freight in Newcastle behind High Bridge, Pumphrey's in the Big Market, and the Dog and Parrot on Clayton Street West. And if you're listening to the radio and haven't got the TV, it will be live on BBC Radio Newcastle. So, Steve, not a happy hunting ground for Newcastle. This, I love it. It's my favourite away game. I'm missing it this year because of the day that it's on, the time it's on. I just, I can't justify going down there, and I'm spending the time with the family. But I will be watching it on TV. But this is not a happy hunting ground for us.
No, it's not, Steve, is it? It's not a happy hunting ground for many clubs either. Just hearing that stat at 21 games since they lost at home. Always a difficult place to go. Saw the last two games, saw the Man United game and saw the Arsenal game, and on both occasions you look at it and you're thinking there's something not quite right with them at the minute. That yes, they're missing Matty, they're missing Robertson in particular. Who I rate as a very, very good fullback, and yet they're sitting top of the league. They've dropped points at home in the last two games as well. Yet they're sitting top of the league. There's something about quality teams, well-run teams, well-organised teams with experience of this league who can go through what is potentially viewed by many of us as a bad patch, losing, dropping points at home, and yet still sit top of the league at the end of Christmas and heading into the new year. And yes, Klopp gets on my nerves, doesn't he? He gets on everybody's nerves. He came into the Premier League as a breath of fresh air, like most new managers do, especially when they come from the continent and they bring new ideas and they have a smile on their face. And then all of a sudden, over the last couple of years, Klopp turned into Mr. Misery. He had his teeth done, he had his eyes done, looked like he had his hair done, got himself a new baseball cap, and the whole makeup of Klopp. But he turned into an angry man as well. Someone who, for some reason, decided that the only way that he could motivate his team was to make out that everybody was against them. Strange. It's not the sort of thing that you would normally associate with managers of his ilk. But that's what he's done, and it works to a greater extent than the lesser with him at the moment. It seems to have galvanised his squad, and he's done quite well, hasn't he, in terms of the changes of personnel. Some of the players that they lost in the at the end of last season, and people looked at it and thought, "Oh, crikey, that they're going to go through a change of period, and they're not going to be as effective." Some of the players that brought in, people looked at Endo as a perfect example and thought they're not going to be good enough. But he's put together a really, really decent squad, and they're sitting there playing decent football, and they deserve to be sitting at the top of the league, especially when they're up there and they've got Arsenal, who just seem to have once again hit that wall. But it's going to be a fascinating game, Steve, because the way that we've been, we're all sitting there going, it's just like Newcastle to turn the tables on them, especially if you can get the crowd. And there's been a lot talked about atmosphere at St James's Park, but there's also a lot being talked on Anfield about atmosphere inside Anfield itself, not being the same, even though that they've had the new part of the ground opened up, and it's now got a much larger capacity. But again, there's that famous word, tourist supporter, seems to be coming out of Liverpool at the moment, in form of criticism of the atmosphere that they've always revered as being absolutely top class. So I think this is an opportunity, if anything, where if Eddie can get his lineup right, get the players mentally prepared, get them right, and they can, because they've got the quality, they've got the ability. It's just whether they can galvanise that into a performance on Monday, and surprise a few people. it's great that we're going into that game with that with that mental thought, and it's the sort of game where you would expect players of Isak's ilk and Bruno and Trippier to be able to raise their game. That extra 1% that's sometimes all that's needed to get a good performance out of them. So are we going to see Newcastle United play like they did at Luton? I very much doubt it. I hope we don't. Are we going to see a Newcastle United who in their previous visits to Anfield have done reasonably well and just not had the run of the green? Quite possibly. But maybe it's time that things turn for Newcastle. Maybe it's the start of the new year. It's a change that we can look at positively for before the derby in the cup on the following Saturday. So it's a game, as I say, I'm looking forward to, and it's a game I know that the Scousers always enjoy having the Newcastle fans there to create an atmosphere, and maybe we can help boost them and have a little bit of a better atmosphere than they have had over the last few weeks, and they can drown out some of their critics as well.
Give us your prediction, Steve. Did you get that, Steve? Give us your prediction.
My prediction, I'm going to go 1-1, Steve. I think they're in that draw situation, and I'm going to go for 1-1 draw.
Okay. Over to you, Mitch. Tough game, this.
Always. The day trip to Anfield's a piece of cake. It'll be a long way away, I'm sure. I keep asking myself, what's the most Newcastle United thing to do? It's to go and smash and grab a 1-0 win in the 89th minute. Because it is. What I want to see at the weekend is a reaction. I want to see a positive reaction to two games that they should have done far better with. That 4 points for me was an absolute minimum out of those two games. And they know they've screwed up. They know they've underperformed. I'm not overly bothered about if we lose, because I'm used to losing at Anfield. But I want to see a reaction. I want to see people respond positively to two bad performances and an opportunity. Because like my dad touched on earlier in the show, we got done by them at home. He pops up with two bloody goals, two cracking goals, by the way, out the blue, when we'd genuinely made a big change and decided we had to go for it. And that's one of the first times, maybe other than Tottenham away when, what was the Italian manager there? Outdid him when we got beat 5-1 down at Tottenham. Made changes in the second half that Eddie couldn't cope with. And Conte. Yes, when Conte did him. And Klopp did that because he had no to lose.
Yeah.
They changed their playing style because they had no to lose. And they got a win out of it. And I begrudgingly give Klopp that. Mm-hmm. But for me, the most Newcastle United thing to do would be to go there and smash and grab a win and come back with 3 points, and suddenly the garden's rosier, you know. I would just like to see a reaction. Simple as that, a positive reaction. Something to give with some positivity going into that game against the Magnums.
Well, give us a prediction. Have you got the dice?
I have got the dice, yes.
Let's see what the dice say.
The magic dice says, oh my God. This is genuine, by the way. 0-1.
And what do you say, Mitch?
Draw.
1-1.
One apiece. Yeah.
Okay. I wish I could be optimistic, lads. I'm going for a 3-1 win to Liverpool. I can't see Newcastle, and I think that's a decent result for us. I think Toon Armies nailed it. We've won 1 and 6, and that was against 10 men. We've been terrible for the last 4 weeks, and there's been no great miracle in the last few days. And Eddie Howe, I think, is looking nervous about this. He's putting a brave face on, but I am not looking forward to this at all. George, Give us your take and give us a prediction.
Well, I mean, like you, Steve, I used to like going to Liverpool and to the other place on Merseyside because I used to get the pleasure of taking the lads in the car and having a good day out with them. The only trouble is going to Anfield. You got a good day, but you very rarely got a good result. Haven't stood in the end and sang "Walk Alone" with all the idiots, but never mind. If the right Newcastle turns up, a positive result isn't unreasonable. And positive result for me would be as Steve says, a 1-1 would be a positive result. But they are capable, as well as Neil says, of turning everything on its head and coming back with a sneaky victory. That would be even better. However, my concern is if the Newcastle United that was on the pitch just after Nottingham Forest scored their equaliser, then I'm as depressed as you are, and we could get a real shellacking, and 3-1 would be easy. It could be a lot worse than that if we play like that. So I'm still going to be positive and stick with me 1-1 and hope that the right Newcastle turns up on the day and not the one that masqueraded as Newcastle in the second half against Nottingham Forest.
Okay, that is the final Amigos of 2023. Thanks to everybody for the support as usual. Glad we managed to do a live. We tend to have 2 weeks off, but I think all of the lads fancy doing it, especially after those results, just to give people a bit of a boost. I am back in the morning. I'm going to do Eddie Howe's press conference review. It was only 18 minutes long, but I will chuck one of them in tomorrow. And then we will be back on Tuesday with a fans forum. I am going to rearrange George's Ask George. I've just got the flyer off John, so we are going to do that next week. Maybe do that on Tuesday as well, George. But I'll be in touch with you and let you know. We'll get around to doing that because I know people are excited for that one. But yes, all it remains is to say Happy New Year. Have a good one. Drink sensibly.
And to everybody, yes.
Eat sensibly, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys back next Friday.
And thanks for everybody that turns up to the food bank. It is a thrill. We do like to meet you. It's really nice.
Great stuff, guys. Have a good night. Take care.
Cheers, everyone.
Hello, lads.
Yeah.